Mauro, welcome.
Hello, Vas. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Perfect. Good. Welcome, madam. How are you doing?
Very well, Vance. How are you?
All good. All good. Thank you so much. Very good to see you.
Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Good afternoon to you. How are you?
Well, very well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Ambassador.
Good afternoon. I can't see you on the screen actually.
Let me just see if I can pin Mauro because so you can see him.
Yes.
Hello.
We're just waiting for Ambassador Tersi to log in and then we can start. Honorable Gancha will be joining a little later because she's a little delayed, but she said that she will be logging in around 2:20, 2:25. So I think we can, she said if we start, then she'll join in and she'll essentially speak once she's connected. So we'll just wait for Ambassador Tersi. I've just sent him a message and then we could probably start on time.
Buongiorno Vas, buongiorno a tutti, sono Giulio Terzi.
Buongiorno, Ambasciatore.
Buongiorno.
Okay. Given that we have everybody here, Ambassador Tersi was just saying that Honorable Gancha will be joining us a little later today because she's a little held up. So she will be joining at around 14:25, 14:30. So she's asked we start and we start the discussion and then she will join in as soon as she can connect. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar today, which for me as well is quite a rather personal topic because it is in memoriam of the 26/11 attacks on Mumbai in 2008. It's the 13th anniversary of a brutal attack that not only tried to destroy the soul of India's most lively city, but also tried to destroy it economically. It was potentially probably the first time where 10, 12 terrorists tried to and inflicted huge amounts of civilian damage, also changing the paradigm of terrorism in the world. The city itself, as usual, showed a lot of strength and solidity. Men in uniforms such as Hemant Karkare, Vijay Salaskar, and Kamte perished, senior officials of the Bombay police. Lots of common civilians perished, sometimes trying to protect other people, sometimes trying to protect themselves. And a lot of landmarks of the city were damaged. The attack went on for almost 3 days before the terrorists were killed and one of the terrorists was arrested. On the 7th of November, a Pakistani court freed 6 terrorists mentored by Hafiz Saeed, who was the founder of Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jamaat-ul-Dawa, which were responsible for the attack. which has broadly been deduced by Indian and US and several other law enforcement agencies of several other countries, given that people from over 15 countries perished in this attack. Today's webinar is partially to remember these attacks, to discuss them, and to see how the world has evolved since in the past 13 years. So without much ado, I request Her Excellency Dr. Nina Malhotra, Ambassador of India to Rome, to say a few words. Madam Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shinoy, and good afternoon once again, everyone. As was said 13 years ago on this day, on a normal Wednesday evening, the financial capital of India, Mumbai, was wounded by dastardly terror attacks on multiple locations. The siege of Mumbai lasted for almost 4 frightening days. 166 people lost their lives and more than 300 others were injured in the attacks. We all can't forget the fear, the desperation, and that sense of helplessness and anger we felt on 26 November 2008. I'm sure we all remember exactly where we were that day, what we were doing when we got the news. Probably some of us frozen in shock, others in tears. Today, we somberly remember the victims of this dastardly attack and the valiant security personnel who laid down their lives to protect ours. We all know that amid the shock, rage, mourning, and terror that took over Mumbai, there were incredible stories of courage. People helped each other without borders of nationality and creed, and many worked to save human lives. While trying to save others, many of these heroes faced the bullets of the terrorists and made the ultimate sacrifice. I want to express my respect also to those who suffered injuries, physical damages, or psychological wounds and severe traumas that followed this dreadful attack. Although most of the people who died and got injured during the attacks were Indians, 14 other countries lost their nationals in these attacks. Among them, also an Italian, Antonio Di Lorenzo, lost his life in India during this brutal attack, while almost 50 other Italian citizens luckily escaped. May the soul of Di Lorenzo rest in peace, and may his family be assured that the government of India, in his name and in the name of all those who lost their lives, is committed to ensure justice and is firmly engaged in combating and defeating all sorts of terrorism in and outside India. I would also like to highlight that the world knows the truth of the Mumbai terror attacks. The 26/11 terrorist attack was planned, executed, and launched from Pakistani territory. The former Prime Minister of Pakistan has gone on record and admitted that the terrorists were sent from Pakistan's soil. The government of Pakistan needs to give up double standards and expeditiously bring the perpetrators of this horrific attack to justice. This is not just a matter of Pakistan's accountability to the families of the innocent victims who fell to terrorists, but also an international obligation. It gives us pain to find that the main conspirators behind the attack go scot-free in Pakistan. While there is national ban on the terrorist outfit, their leaders have formed several other outfits to collect funds and instigate so-called jihad. It's a matter of deep anguish that even after 13 years of this heinous terror attack, the families of 166 victims from 15 countries across the globe still await closure, with Pakistan showing little sincerity in bringing the perpetrators to justice. The government of India will continue to make every effort to seek justice for the families of the victims and the martyrs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Malhotra. This day goes down in India's own history as a very black day, and I'd like Ambassador Giulio Terzi di Sant'Agata the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Italy, to say a few words from his perspective. Ambassador Terzi.
Thank you very much, my dear friend Vash. But I would like really to express to Your Excellency, Ambassador Noina Malhotra, and the distinguished panelists, the feelings of strong and close solidarity and friendship to the families of the victims because they were killed or injured. And I would like to express also gratitude to Her Excellency for graciously reminding that there was also a mourning in Italy because an Italian, a well-known Italian, was killed, and more than a dozen of others just by luck escaped to the horror of the terrorist attack. I was not a direct witness of that huge tragedy for our Indian friends, but I followed this event and what had happened before, all the discussions and geopolitical repercussions and international relations from a post which is a privileged post for a diplomat, for witnessing world events. It happened that during that November, Italy was still a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, and I had been appointed just a few weeks before as ambassador there, permanent representative. So I was witnessing and was also participating to the emotional but also political reactions of great solidarity all over the world, from Western countries, but from all regional groups in the Security Council and in the Regional Assembly for this terrible crime. So let me reiterate how close I feel personally, and how much emotional it becomes the memory of that tragedy. The Italian government at the time was very supportive of helping the Indian government in contributing to a global engagement against terrorism, against jihadism, global jihadism, of which the attack on Mumbai was a clear example. Although terrorist activities, unfortunately, are not outside of the ordinary reality of India, as in many other countries and the regions in Europe, including Europe and Italy, terrorist activities, unfortunately, are not something which happens rarely or exceptionally. Yes, are exceptional events, but their recurrence has become more frequent after September 11 in the United States, and even more so after Mumbai. Although those activities are not, unfortunately, isolated, the attacks on Mumbai showed an unprecedented combination of skillful planning, of efficient organization, of murderous selection of targets, and of large-scale utilization of resources coming from abroad, as the ambassador has just reminded us. The target was not new. The tactics were similar to those employed, for instance, in Kashmir. But the multiplicity and the quality of the locations attacked, the resilience of the attackers for almost 60 hours, and the evident intent to provoke, to hit foreign targets, gave to the world the clear impression of an imprint of global jihadism, and the global jihadism which had its roots and origin in the neighboring region to India. The majority of the Indian public opinion and the media were quick in laying the blame on Pakistan, which on its side did respond by stressing the fact that Pakistani people and even the highest level of government had been repeatedly victims of similar terrorist attacks, and even important leaders we know very well, Pakistani government, were killed by terrorism. Still, it was also noted that while the attacks on Pakistani soil against the political establishment were primarily carried out by affiliates of Al-Qaeda or affiliates of the Taliban, the attacks in India were carried out by elements of Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jamaat-ud-Dawah, two organizations which were not to be responsible of terrorist strikes in Pakistan. And after 13 years, and even more so since the return to power of the Taliban in Kabul, two issues are, I believe, of overarching importance if we want to address the threat of jihadist terrorism, not only in the Asian subcontinent, but also in a much wider perspective. And these two issues are, first, how to tackle radicalization and violent extremism. And the second, how to improve international cooperation in preventing and fighting jihadist terrorism. These are two issues that, it goes without saying, are closely, very closely related. That is why on the occasion, for instance, of the EU-India counterterrorism dialogue last year, in the framework of the EU-India strategic partnership, the challenges of countering radicalization and violent extremism were clearly underlined. And they were underlined together with the need for combating the terrorist use of internet, the financing of extremist and terrorist activities worldwide, as well as a deeper cooperation when sanctions may be an effective tool and when designations of groups and individuals have to be considered. We should especially welcome a commitment that the EU and the Indian delegations shares in their communique. And I quote, it is important to remind these points, which are points of common engagement between Delhi and Brussels and European capitals. The two delegations, emphasize the need for strengthening international cooperation in this field in a comprehensive and sustained manner. They reaffirmed that it is crucial that perpetrators of violence and terrorism are brought to justice. And we know how important this point is in relation to the Pakistani origin of the Mumbai attack. They, the EU and the India delegation, also underlined the urgent need for all countries to take immediate, sustained, and irreversible action to ensure that no territory under their control is used for terrorist attacks on other countries. And the end of quote. This is a work in progress between the EU and India that goes in parallel with the quite impressive cooperation which has been developed over the last many years, since 2003, between the United States and the Indian government. That is important to realize that after the Western, the coalition, the military coalition in Afghanistan and the Western countries left Kabul last mid-August. After that, on the 28th of October, there has been an important meeting of the US-India Counterterrorism Joint Working Group convened in the framework of the strategic partnership, special strategic partnership between India and the United States. And I'm quoting this because this goes in parallel in terms of direction and substance with the declaration that I just quoted of two delegations between India and the EU. And this meeting just a month ago, a little less than a month ago, stressed some points which I'd like to remember on this occasion. He stressed that both sides strongly condemned any use of terrorist proxies and cross-border terrorism in all its forms and called for the perpetrators of the 26/11 Mumbai attack to be brought to justice. They also called for concerted action against all terrorist groups, including groups proscribed by the United Nations Security Council 2067 Sanction Committee, such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Daesh, Lashkar al-Taiba, and Jaish-e-Mohammed Jem. In line of the resolution 2593, 2021, both sides called on the Taliban to ensure Afghan territory is never again used to threaten or attack any country, shelter or train terrorists, or plan or finance terrorist attacks. Both sides committed to continuing close consultation on developments in Afghanistan and potential terrorist threats emanating from there. The two sides also exchanged views on countering narco-terror networks and transnational illegal weapons and smuggling networks. End of quote. Once again, the focus on Afghanistan should become, therefore, a shared and strong commitment for our bilateral and multilateral efforts in the security field. The sense of a growing strategic partnership in the shared fight against global terrorism is deeply felt in India now, as it was in the past, but I believe with the same intensity than it was years ago, it is now, and even more so, and it is also in Europe after tragedies that we lived through in Europe and in the United States, and even more so after last summer leaving of Kabul. The close friendship between Rome and New Delhi, which has for a long time characterized our relations, has been even more evident at the G20 during the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Draghi, when global and security matters have been successfully discussed and decided. And this has to be interpreted as part of the lessons that the international community and our two countries have learned at the time of 26/11 attack on Mumbai, and in front of the challenges that we are still facing for our international security, for the security and the lives of our people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Terzi, and thank you for putting this whole thing in the context of EU-India relations, because our next speaker is a young researcher and scholar of EU-India relations from King's College London. So before I ask Mauro Bonavita to say a few words, I'd also like to thank you for bringing into context now the spread of this cancer, because first it was India, then it was Pakistan's democracy, and now it started moving towards Afghanistan. So in the past 13 years, we see that this hasn't anyways lessened as far as terroristic attacks go, but just increased. And now with the fall of Kabul, we hope that it won't happen this way, but it looks like the situation will just get worse. Mauro, your thoughts, please.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much, Vashanoi, for organizing this and for inviting me, Madam Ambassador, distinguished guests and panelists. Before I start with my few considerations, let me say something about Mumbai. Actually, Mumbai was the city that adopted me the first time I went to India. I'm very much linked to it. It's a fantastic, vibrant community full of great people. And what happened was not just terrible, but it was extremely unjust, as all the times when civilians are involved in terrorist attacks. So our thoughts goes, of course, with the families of the victims. Now, the European Union and India share, unfortunately, many threats related to terrorism. This is because the current world, it's much more insecure than the world before. Terrorism and security threats, especially in the maritime domain, are shared by India and the European Union, in the sense that as we witness a balance of power which is shifting from the unipolar world to the growing competition between the United States and China, and we know very well the problems in the relationship between China and India, we know that this great geography that is the Indo-Pacific is becoming more and more central. So more and more attention is paid to what's happening there. Now, we can say that when it comes to terrorist threats and other non-traditional threats, including maritime terrorism, piracy, human drugs and weapons smuggling, the European Union has started already to understand the need to work with each other. Since 2004, the European Union and India has created two important different institutions. One is the Maritime Security Dialogue, and the other one is the Counterterrorism Dialogue, which brings together the stakeholders from both sides involved in this. Terrorism, particularly religiously motivated, is an issue, but it's not just limited to the borders between India and Pakistan, but it's much more present in the wider area, which goes from the European Mediterranean countries to North Africa, the Middle East, the Indian Ocean region, and East Asia. Phenomena like climate change are increasing, unfortunately, the impact of this terrorist attack, as the move of population is usually used by terrorist non-state actors in order to trying to bring and infiltrate in different countries. So we are talking about a phenomena which is not simply limited to a specific part of the world. We tend usually to leave the complex that as globalization is bringing together actors which are very far away in the world, we think that the world has become very narrow. This is not true. Geography remains a big issue. And when we have to deal with non-traditional threats, especially non-traditional threat, but this is also true in traditional threats, a single actor cannot respond to them alone. The relationship between the European Union and India is very old. Since the 1960s, India was one of the first actors to start bilateral relations with the then European community. And this year we witnessed a very important summit in Porto between the European Union and India, where Prime Minister Modi and the leaders of the 27 European countries decided to continue to further strengthen this relationship. However, we can say that much more must be done in order to address these threats and these elements. The European Union can support much more India, not just in bilateral relations, but at a multilateral level, where India is bringing up elements related to this kind of threats. We know that the European Union is already involved in counter-piracy activities off the coast of Somalia with the Atalanta operation, where there are also Italian Navy ships involved. And this is a link where India and the European Union should continue to cooperate together. In Italian strategic terms, the concept of a wider Mediterranean is something which has become an issue of concern because of the several threats which are involved in the wider area where Italy looks at. This includes, of course, the links between the Mediterranean and the wider Indian region. So now I come to the issue of India-Italy cooperation. As Ambassador Terzi di Sant'Agata already mentioned, the recent summit between Prime Minister Mario Draghi and Narendra Modi was extremely good. It demonstrates a positive patterns in relation between the two countries, which are constructing a bilateral strategic partnership. However, much more needs to be done from both parts, especially from the Italian side. The Indo-Pacific is going to be the geography of the future, where much of the threats that we are dealing domestically are shared with them and where the future will be decided. And Italy must have a part in it, including India as one of its major partners and supporters. India and Italy share the culture of democracy, and they share a vision of democratization and support for international rule of law. This is a very positive starter act. However, there are many other aspects where Italy and India can work together, from the defense industry to sharing information on counterterrorism to working together in international institutions on these issues. And I believe that there's a real need to see much more work in this sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mauro. And I'd like to first welcome Honorable Gianna Gancia, member of the European Parliament. Benvenuta. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for I was late because of was late on my plane, and so I'm in runway.
Not a problem. So thank you so much, Mauro, for bringing everything into context, especially in between the EU-India relations. Honorable Gancia, I'd like to invite you to say a few words on this day of 26/11, where we're commemorating the 13th anniversary on the attacks in Mumbai. Over to you.
Thank you. I will speak in Italian if it's possible, because I'm not in a good place to speak English.
Perfect.
Io semplicemente mi scuso ancora per il ritardo, voglio ricordare ancora gli attacchi di Mumbai del 2008, che furono attacchi terroristici veri e propri, avvenuti proprio da una organizzazione terroristica islamica, e non dobbiamo dimenticarlo mai. Questi terroristi che arrivavano dal Pakistan fecero 12 attacchi con sparatorie e bombe, e della durata poi di 4 giorni a Mumbai. Gli attacchi attirarono dall'inizio una diffusa condanna globale, e sono morte, dobbiamo ricordare, lo ricordo anche agli italiani, sono morte 175 persone e più di 300 persone sono state ferite. C'è stato solo un unico sopravvissuto, e che ha rivelato che gli attentatori erano membri del gruppo terroristico di Al-Qaeda, tra gli altri. E il governo dell'India ha dichiarato che gli attentatori, come sappiamo tutti ormai, provenivano dal Pakistan. Chiedo scusa se faccio questo riassunto, ma è molto importante per quello che poi noi abbiamo chiesto. Tutto questo affinché non sia dimenticato, perché è estremamente attuale, perché nel 2018 l'ex ministro pakistano ha suggerito che il governo pakistano, cioè, non è stato così chiaro sul ruolo dell'attacco pakistano, ecco, definiamolo così. C'è stato però un risvolto importante del novembre del 2021, e questo ci teniamo a ricordarlo, perché i sei leader di questa organizzazione di cui ho parlato prima sono stati assolti, questo è gravissimo, dal tribunale pakistano il 6 novembre del 2021, e l'Alta Corte di Lahore, credo Lahore, ha condannato, cioè ha annullato, chiedo scusa, la condanna di un tribunale, e assolto i sei leader dell'organizzazione vietata, e quindi questo è un danno per noi tutti. Quindi cosa abbiamo fatto in Parlamento? Anche perché questi famigerati colpevoli sono sicuramente un pericolo per tutta la nostra società, per tutte le democrazie. Abbiamo indirizzato una lettera al primo ministro Modi, Namaste, perché proprio mentre la Repubblica dell'India, che è la più grande democrazia del mondo, celebrava il 26 novembre 2020 il Samidava Divas, praticamente con questa assoluzione di questi terroristi da parte del Pakistan, credo che sia stato un attacco al valore democratico che ha l'India come grande democrazia, e anche l'abbiamo ritenuto doveroso come Europarlamento, continuiamo a ritenerlo doveroso proprio per i valori democratici, la difesa della Costituzione dell'India, che è una Costituzione, come tutti sappiamo, stabilita nel 1949, cioè il 130° anniversario, era quel giorno in cui noi scrivemmo al Premier Modi. Quindi questo continuiamo a ribadirla. La Repubblica dell'India è ancora giovane e l'India è intrisa di storia e di cultura, ha assolutamente una diversità di stati, culture, religioni. L'India è un faro per il mondo democratico e libero. È un faro anche per noi europei, ed è per questo che continuiamo a difendere le posizioni, a condannare l'atteggiamento del Pakistan, perché noi dobbiamo anche all'India il fatto che ha mantenuto la pace nel paese, anche in delle regioni dove era molto difficile farlo, e così come ha fatto anche per assicurare indipendenza a ciascun Stato, finché alcune cose sono poi state rese necessarie proprio per l'atteggiamento pakistano. Io parlo molto chiaro e credo di avere informazioni sulla storia che purtroppo parte, di cui ho fatto un piccolo cenno, ma che lasciatemi dire assolutamente vergognosa. E quindi è stata fatta questa lettera indirizzata al Premier Modi, e continueremo assolutamente a batterci in Parlamento, e vi prego davvero di considerarci al vostro fianco, perché lo abbiamo già dimostrato, lo siamo, e continuiamo continuamente a porre domande, interrogazioni, atti parlamentari al vicepresidente della Commissione alto rappresentante dell'Unione per gli affari esteri Joseph Borrell, e anzi siamo disponibili in qualunque modo, io personalmente sicuramente, ma tanti miei colleghi di cui oggi ho la fortuna e l'onore di essere qui come portavoce, per prevenire il terrorismo, perché di questo parliamo. In particolare abbiamo chiesto all'Unione Europea di diciamo essere meno ambigua, voglio usare un eufemismo, rispetto alla situazione che diciamo ai rapporti che tiene col Pakistan. Ecco, io sono molto chiara, perché credo che queste situazioni delicate siano importanti non solo per l'India, che ripeto è una grande democrazia occidentale, ma anche per noi europei, e quindi è assolutamente fondamentale essere al vostro fianco per quel che riguarda anche adesso avremo la Financial Action Tax, quindi credo che ha evidenziato il fallimento del Pakistan nell'affrontare il terrorismo. Noi l'abbiamo definito fallimento, ma io mi spingo oltre, c'è forse anche un po' di complicità, e mi prendo la responsabilità di quello che dico, e lo dico a titolo personale, ci tengo a specificarlo. Quindi ecco, io vi ringrazio davvero di cuore per l'invito, mi scuso per il collegamento in ritardo, ma purtroppo gli aerei in questo periodo erano in ritardo, infatti sono collegata da un autogrill in autostrada, e sono a disposizione e saluto l'ambasciatrice, ringrazio lei Vas, saluto tutti i relatori e ribadisco, siamo disponibili nel nostro ruolo di membri del Parlamento europeo ad appoggiarvi in questa lotta e dove dobbiamo proprio nel nostro luogo, che è il Parlamento europeo, dobbiamo far capire che la vostra lotta è una lotta importante anche per noi.
Onorevole, la ringrazio tanto per lo sforzo. Capisco che venerdì è sempre una giornata molto molto complicata, quindi la ringrazio per la disponibilità e anche per le parole. Just back switching to English, I'd like to really thank Honorable Gancha for mentioning something that is normally delicate, which is calling out Pakistan for supporting terrorism, and which we've all been quite diplomatic about avoiding and talking about. The fact that this whole strategy of Jihad Inc. will finally also engulf Pakistan is obvious, and it's just a matter of time. And this has created a security situation not only for India and now for Afghanistan, but also for the whole region and the world in general. So thank you so much for your efforts in trying to continue to ask the EU to be a little less ambiguous with Pakistan and a little more forceful, because this continuous relationship between Pakistan and jihad needs to stop at some point. Otherwise, it will imperil all of humanity. That said, I would like to invite our expert on India, veteran journalist Danilo Taino of Corriere della Sera, to say a few words. Now, Danilo knows more about India than even I do, so Danilo, the floor is for you.
Thank you, Vas. It's not true, but we love the country, so we try to understand it. I remember, thank you for the invitation, first of all, and thank you to Ambassador Malhotra for being with us. I remember pretty well those days in 2008, because a friend of mine, a journalist from Corriere della Sera, had the wife trapped in one of the hotels in Mumbai during the terrorist attacks. And I think it was the Oberoi Hotel. And it was a pretty an emotional situation for him and also for us. I remember well this. And I always thought that probably that attack has been a sort of model for other terrorists in the world, and particularly to the terrorists in Paris in 2015 with the Bataclan and the Stade de France attacks. And probably the pattern in some way was quite similar. Different attacks in different points of a big and important city. But you know, Vas, that I'm pretty worried about the situation in Pakistan. So I will also say a few words about the situation of the country, because I think that the anniversary of the 26/11 is always important because it gives us the possibility to speak about Pakistan, about the relationship between India and Pakistan, and particularly about the role of Pakistan in Asia and in the world. I've seen today that the Indian government has summoned one of the Pakistani diplomats, asking for speeding up the trials with these terrorists. We will see what happens. But the problem is that the situation now is different in compared with the 13 years ago, I think. It's different particularly because in August, the Taliban has won the war, we can say that, in Afghanistan. And the risk now is that I fear that Pakistan will in some way sucked more turmoil by the Taliban from Afghanistan. I think that in Afghanistan there were 5,000, I think, TTP terrorists, Pakistani terrorists in Afghanistan, that now maybe they have a strong base there for intervening in the region. So there are more terrorists around. There are more refugees going from Afghanistan to Pakistan. And I think that it will provoke much more bad relations between Pakistan and the neighboring countries, particularly India. Also because Pakistan has always used the jihadist terrorists for sustain their mission of contrasting India or fighting India. So I think the situation there is in some way turning much more dangerous, even much more dangerous than before. Second, I think that in Pakistan now, the generals, in Rawalpindi in particular, the generals are stronger than ever. Stronger than ever because they have a civilian president that that is quite close to them, who does everything they want, and the relationship with the Afghan government is stronger than ever. So I think that the situation also from this viewpoint is, sorry, I have a cat here disturbing me, but it's not a Pakistani cat, I can tell you. I'm sorry about that. The third point is that probably now China will be able to deal with Pakistan also towards being more stronger Pakistan, I mean, towards India. I think that a sort of, I wouldn't call it an alliance, but a strong relationship between China and Pakistan is going to be a major problem for India as well. So they can play in two directions from two viewpoints. And so I think that now the situation for India, for Delhi, is much more dangerous than before. We have to remember that 38% of the $120 billion of foreign debt of Pakistan is held by the Chinese companies and by the Chinese government. So they are very, very much related to Beijing. So they will also in some way be sorry, this cat is disturbing really. I'm sorry. And so I think that also the relationship between China and Pakistan will be a problem in the next few years. So all of this means that Pakistan is going in some way to be in trouble and to create trouble to other countries, and particularly towards India. I am pretty happy that the European Union is going to develop major initiatives and major policies towards the situation in the Indo-Pacific and particularly towards India, and I hope it will be developed in a good way, in a good manner, because I really think that. Sorry, I'm very sorry about this.
Danilo, this must be the Pakistani hand because there is no other way to explain this.
Probably you are right. Probably you are right. But I will stop it here because I'm very sorry, but I just wanted to say that, in my opinion, we have to remember in this occasion that the situation is not getting better than before, but probably we have to be very, very much worried about the situation that is brewing around India and in Pakistan as well. I'm sorry for these disturbances.
Thank you so much, Danilo. And while we absolutely understand the interference, I think you got your point across, and that was very important. I'd just like to conclude, first of all, thanking Her Excellency Dr. Neena Malhotra for having graced this occasion and provided us with her kind words. For us, 2611, especially for those who love Mumbai, who were born there or like Mauro, who are adopted there or who have lived there, is always going to be a day of remembrance. For me personally, I happen to know Vijay Salaskar, who was then the head of the ATS in Mumbai and perished on this day. Salaskar started his career in the neighborhood I grew up, and he was actually my first experience with a police person, and he was a very, very nice human being, a very kind person, and I knew him as a child. So his passing away for me has always been personal. On this particular day, it has always been quite difficult because those 3 days for me that I watched on the television were quite surreal. So for a minute, I'd really like us to have one moment of silence before we conclude, just thinking about all these people who perished, most of them who did so for life and liberty. That said, I'd really like to thank all of you, Ambassador Persi, Danilo Taino, Mauro Bonavita, and of course, Honorable Gancha, for all your efforts and also for being present today. And that said, I'd really like to thank you for participating. So thank you very much. I wish you all a very happy weekend and have a great day ahead. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Che bel gatto.
Onorevole Gancia, buongiorno, piacere vederla, dottor Taino.
Buongiorno, mi dispiace, ero in ritardo, mi sono collegata di fretta e furia un autogrill, tra l'altro dove c'è un rumore pazzesco, ma ho sentito tutto interessantissimo.
Meraviglioso colore rosa, quindi bellissima, bellissima visione.
Ah, ciao Giulio.
Ciao.
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 Un saluto a tutti.
Grazie a tutti voi.
Ciao ciao.
Grazie, arrivederci.